Hi, I'm Kayla, the BookTube Turtle. So for today's video, I'm going to be reviewing and discussing Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. I'd just like to say, this is the second time I'm filming this video. I filmed it like a week ago, and that it didn't work out. If you want to know the whole thing about it, I talk about it in my frustrations of uploading video. I'll link that in the description. So yeah, I'm filming this again, and hopefully it actually works this time. Basically, I didn't use my camera, I used the webcam on my laptop. Don't do that. Bad idea. So anyway, first I'm going to give a short review that doesn't have any spoilers in it. That's just kind of like my overall general thoughts. And then I'm going to go into a more in-depth discussion that does contain spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, you're going to want to leave the video when I get to that point. Overall, this video is probably going to be really long. I mean, my first go around, it was like an hour of raw footage. But there is a lot of things I want to discuss because this is a 700-page book and a lot happened. So overall, this book was fantastic. I think the Dark Artifices is the best like Shadowhunter series so far. I feel like they just keep getting better. It's the second book in the series that follows Emma Carstairs and Julian Blackthorne that were introduced in City of Heavenly Fire, and the series follows them 5 years after the Mortal Instruments ends. And yes, you do have to read every single Shadowhunter book that comes before this series. All the Mortal Instruments, all the Infernal Devices. I highly recommend reading Tales from Shadowhunter Academy because all of these series are connected and you don't want to read too far ahead and be spoiled for other things or not understand exactly what's going on. So I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. On like a percentage scale, I think I'd give it a 96 versus my 98 for Lady Midnight. I'm not entirely sure why this book wasn't as good for me. I think a lot of it was due to timing. When the book came out, I had so much going on with graduating and starting my job that life was just really stressful and I didn't have a lot of time to like sit down and actually read. Whereas with Lady Midnight, when that came out, I had nothing going on and I read it in like 3 days. It took me 18 days to read Lord of Shadows. Plus, I had just started this channel too, and that's been taking up a lot of time. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I love doing this, but I mean, it is time consuming. So I think being so busy could have taken away from like the full experience of the book. However, there are some aspects of Lord of Shadows that I actually like more than Lady Midnight. Like, I think they were done better in the second book than the first one, but I'll get to all of that later. So if you haven't read Lady Midnight, you're going to want to leave now. I'm going to give a short summary of Lord of Shadows that doesn't contain spoilers for the second book, but it will for the first book. Bye if you haven't read Lady Midnight. So the second book picks up about 2 weeks after Lady Midnight ends, which if you don't remember, like if you haven't read Lord of Shadows yet, it was the whole line that Mark said, "Why lie?" in regards to Emma and Mark fake dating. So the book, it's kind of calm at the beginning of the book, almost too calm. You know, things do get crazy. They continue to deal with the parabatai bond and the curse, and there's just so much like secret keeping and lying to everybody in this whole group. Things get very complex. But I will say something about this book is that as complex as things get, it never gets confusing. And so like that part was really well done. And I think it did a good job of like balance between Emma and Julian's like parabatai plotline and like the other action in the plot lines. Because I feel like Lady Midnight, it was very focused on Emma and Julian and their parabatai stuff, everything going on with that. Lord of Shadows explores other characters outside of them. We specifically get to see a lot more of all of the Blackthorne siblings, and that was something that I really appreciated. Okay, so if you haven't read Lord of Shadows and you don't want to be spoiled, leave now. I'm going to go into a full-on discussion of this entire book, and trust me, you do not want to be spoiled. Alright, so I'm going to try to go in chronological order, but like the book kind of switches point of views around, so it's kind of probably going to be all over the place. Anyway, let's get into it. So the beginning of the book kind of started out slow for me. I'd say about the first 100 pages or so, and then it picked up. But I felt like Lady Midnight was the same. You just have to get back into it. So the book starts out in Kit's point of view again, who is awesome, by the way. He's in the weapons room of the Institute, and he's like trying to decide what weapons to steal. And I'm like, you've been here for 2 weeks. Calm down. You don't need to be stealing anything. And then Jace comes in, and I got so excited for this because, you know, Kit and Jace are both Herondales, and that was really exciting because Jace hasn't really had any family connection before. So that was really nice that they were able to meet. Okay, so with the rest of the characters, they're at the pier on like a mission. They're like in a battle with sea demons, which doesn't seem that significant at the time, but like, you know, it obviously ends up becoming so much more important later on. But at the beginning, I was more focused on like the dynamic between all the characters because I was like, what's going on? It's been 2 weeks. What's happening with all the characters now? And I just really wanted to understand where all the characters stood with each other. So I specifically want to talk about Julian's reaction to the whole Emma and Mark thing. He was surprisingly calm. Like, I expected him to explode, but he was calm and like happy for them or whatever, which really it was just kind of all of that building up instead of him immediately finding out and going off. So then they go back to the Institute, and we have the whole, you know, Clary and Jace are there, and they have like a mission to ferry, which they don't like share with everybody, but they do talk to Mark about it. They're on some secret assignment, and we still don't really hear much about it, except they're looking for some kind of weapon. And on page 34 and 35 of the hardback book, it says, Sebastian Morgenstern left a weapon with one of the courts of Fairy, a weapon that could destroy us all, destroy all Nephilim. So my immediate thought is, could this weapon be Sebastian and the Seelie Queen's child? I know this theory has kind of been tossed around after Lady Midnight, and I don't know if we've really gotten any confirmation of if this whole theory is actually true or not, that Sebastian and the Seelie Queen do actually have a child. But if it is true and that child is powerful, like, they could potentially be used as a weapon. Then we have this whole thing with Clary. So at the end of Lady Midnight, we get that short story where Jace proposes to Clary, and Clary, well, they get interrupted. And, you know, it ends with Clary being like she dreads when they get back because she'll have to give him her answer. And everybody was like, what is going on? So we get an explanation. Clary takes Emma up on the roof, tells her that she said no to Jace, and she explains why. She starts talking about how she used to have these dreams of things that were going to happen. And then she explains that she doesn't want to marry Jace because she has this feeling, she calls it like a sense of knowing, that she's going to die soon. And she doesn't know when or where, how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen soon. And she doesn't want to marry Jace if she's going to like die kind of right after. She thinks that that's going to be like harder on him. But anyway, I read that and I was just like, are you serious? Like, your series is over. I shouldn't have to be worrying about whether or not you're going to live or die. I've got enough to worry about with the main characters of this story. But we don't really see or hear from Clary or Jace for the rest of the book, so I don't know what's going on with them or, you know, their whole mission. We don't know anything about that. And I do have kind of a theory that goes in with that, but it's kind of a long explanation. I'm gonna have a separate video just about my theories going in to like the last book, so I'm gonna save that for that video. So then we have Diego, Zara, and the Centurions. I just want to say I was a little confused at the beginning of the book as to why Diego was just like with them. Like, they were acting like he was just a part of their group, and I'm like, go away. Oh, and him and Christina are like back together, and I'm like, he betrayed you. What are you doing? And then the Centurions, which are part of the Sholomance, I believe, show up at the Institute. Zara was with them, who turns out to be Diego's fiance. And like, yeah, I know Diego kind of clears that up later on in the book, but I'm like, you could have given us some warning, Diego. But I absolutely hated Zara from the very beginning. Even before we knew her true motives, she was so rude and condescending. And like how she would order them around and be like, no, you can't go on the mission, go do my laundry. And I'm just like, do your own laundry. I just hated her so much. So basically they wanted to take over the LA Institute to like gain power or whatever, and they want to set up like a whole registry for downworlders, and I'm like, you know, we don't need to be taking any more of their rights away. They already don't have a lot, especially the fairies with the whole cold piece. Alright, so now I want to talk about Ty, Livy, and Kit. We got so much more of Ty and Livy in this book, and it was fabulous because Ty is one of my favorite characters. So I'm going to talk about him first. So first of all, we do get like official confirmation that Ty does have autism. I know that theory was kind of tossed around after Lady Midnight, but it was actually kind of surprising to me that when Kit mentioned it to Julian, you know, Jules had no idea what he was talking about. You know, it's like they don't have an understanding of like mental illnesses and like mundane medicine or whatever the way that, you know, humans do. I'm wondering if like things like that are just more uncommon in Shadowhunters, or if it's just not like spoken of the way it is in like the normal human world. I mean, you know how the clave is about people who don't fit like their perfect description of a Shadowhunter, so like is it just not, it's just kind of like ignored. But anyway, I really like how Kit didn't make a big deal about it. You know, when he was talking to Julian, he was just like, well, it's just, you know, it's part of who he is. It's not that big of a deal. I really like how Ty was portrayed in the book. Okay, so throughout the course of the story, Ty and Livy were already close, and then they kind of bring Kit into their group, and they just become this little trio. And they're pretty much always together throughout the book. I will say it was kind of weird when, Livy and Kit had like their whole kiss scene. I was like, whoa, what's going on? But luckily that didn't go anywhere, and we get to like towards the end of the book, and Livy's like, yeah, no, that's too weird, we're not going there. And Kit was like, I agree. So I'm like, all right, we're good. Because, you know, we don't need some other weird love triangle forming. We have enough relationship issues to deal with in this book. But I'm really excited for Ty and Kit, and I'm really hoping that Kit will be there for Ty in this last book, especially after what happened at the end, because Ty's gonna need somebody that he can like turn to, because he's gonna fall apart. I'm gonna get to more of that later when I talk about the ending. Alright, so now I want to talk about Emma and Julian and their whole relationship, specifically before the truth came out. So their whole situation is kind of a mess. You know, you have Emma and Mark who are pretending to be in a relationship, but Mark doesn't actually know why. But I really love how like chill Mark was about the whole thing. This really made me like Mark so much more, that he didn't ask too many questions, and he trusted her, and he was like, he knew that she had a reason behind it, and it wasn't really his place to know what that reason was. He was just helping her out, and that really made me like Mark's character so much more. Hi, so if the camera just moved a little bit, or I look a little bit different, that's because this is a different day. So when I went to edit this video, some parts of it were just missing, because I guess the camera cut out and I didn't realize it. So now I'm gonna go back and redo these parts again. Having so much trouble filming this video. Anyway, Christina does know everything about the whole like Mark and Emma thing, which is good, because if she didn't know, I feel like that would complicate things so much more. And honestly, I'm surprised that Julian didn't figure it out himself, that Emma was lying to him about Mark. It just seems so obvious. Like, you don't go from being in love with someone one day and then the next day you're falling in love with their brother. Like, that, it doesn't work like that. And I was also kind of upset with Emma at the beginning, just that, like, because she wouldn't tell him about the curse. And I'm like, even if you still want to pretend that you don't love him anymore or whatever, he still deserves to know about the curse. You know, that affects his whole life and his family, and he deserves to know that. And it was driving me crazy that she just kept keeping it from him. So now I want to talk about this whole, like, mind reading thing. We keep getting these references of Emma and Julian, like, reading each other's minds or something. There was that bit at the end of Lady Midnight when they were at the cave, where Emma thought that she heard Julian say, wait, but he wasn't, like, physically there with her, so it was like she heard it in her mind. And then, towards the beginning of Lord of Shadows, when they're, like, up in the attic or whatever, and, you know, when Julian tells her, he was like, I needed you, and then you were there. And he says, it was like you heard me. Oh, and then there was the whole scene with Christina when the bonding thing between Christina and Mark finally set in. Okay, so Christina is bleeding and Emma starts panicking in her mind, and I quote, this is on page 340. Julian, I need you right now. Come right now, please. She says this in her mind, and he comes. So I'm like, did she send that directly to his mind? Is this some part of like their heightened parabatai bond? I want a clear explanation, and it's like they haven't even addressed it themselves. So then we have this illegal trip to Ferry with Mark, Emma, Julian, and Christina. Well, Mark went to go save Kieran, and then the other three went to go get Mark, but you know, they're all there. So Christina has her, you know, like family heirloom medallion that like, as long as they're close to her, time will pass normally for them, not fairy time. And something I really want to know is why/how her family is so connected to Fairy. Like, she knows all of these things, and I guess her family's done research, so I'm just curious as to what started that, and is there some kind of backstory to that that's going to come out later. So we come across the, I don't know how you say this, the puka thing at the gate. They're each told that they're going to encounter something while they're in Ferry, and at this time we only know Emma's. So it tells Emma that she is going to come across the face of a loved one that's now dead. So they meet up with Mark and they save Kieran, and well, they're trying to save Kieran, and Emma gets roped into like battling with this fairy. And so she wins and she knocks the helmet off, and it's her father. I'm immediately like, it's not actually your father. First of all, the puka thing told you that this was gonna happen, and you're in Fairy. You know they play mind tricks on you, and it took her so long to like snap out of it. So they escape and they meet up with Mean, who like protects them for the night or whatever. And then we have the whole like fairy dance party thing. That might have been before they went to save Kieran. I don't remember. It's all in the same little section. And that's when Mark and Christina go out, and that's when, like, you know, they first get bonded or whatever. Oh, and then Christina like gets this drink and she drinks it, and I'm like, number one rule in Fairy is you don't eat or drink anything they give you. I could not believe she did that. I was like, whoa, what are you doing? For someone who knows so much about the Fae, what? You're breaking rule number one. And then on that same night, we have the whole thing where Julian kisses that shapeshifter fairy who looks like Emma, and the whole time I'm just like, it's not her, Julian. It's not her. Why would you think that it would be her? It's not Emma. And then Emma sees. And that whole thing is kind of a mess, but whatever.